Hey guys, it's Sade from Sadie Saves the Day, and I have another Hanhemuhle watercolor paper review for you. It's another one of their mold-made papers, another 100% cotton. This time it is the Leonardo line. These are only 600 GSM papers. You heard me. 600 GSM, twice as much as 300 GSM. These are like chipboard. They are so thick. It comes in hot pressed, cold pressed, and rough. They are 100% cotton, surface and internally sized, acid free, age resistant, a natural white color. They come in blocks and sheets, and when you buy them in sheets, they have 2 deckled and 2 trimmed edges. So let me say first of all that this was just such a luxurious experience. It was just so nice to paint on these. I have never painted on 300 GSM paper before trying these out, and I am extremely tempted to paint with this on the regular because it was just so nice. The way that the paper took the colors, the way that it layered, the way the color moved, the amount of time that you had to move your colors. And it's also much more resistant than the other papers. So starting with the hot pressed, I have to admit, still was not my favorite hot pressed. I think it was still really easy to muddy colors. It does have a problem where it is more prone to backgrounds. That's more common among hot press papers, but I haven't really seen that in the Hanhemuhle papers until this hot pressed. Lifting was much more normal, much more what I would expect. The phthalo green was harder to lift, the earth was easy to lift. That's pretty normal. Granulation was whatever. Smoothing was easy, details were nice, and that wash was really nice. It was surprisingly clear. And the way that the paper held up to abuse was just beautiful. You couldn't even tell that anything happened in the erasing test, the masking fluid test, or the masking tape test. And in the glazing, you can see that it stayed pretty crisp. Surprisingly, the crispest of these three was not the hot pressed, but the cold pressed. But still, it did really well in the glazing, and it was just nice. The hot press I don't think is the star of the Leonardo line, but it is definitely really nice. Now let's talk about the 600 GSM cold press. I think this is what I would call the star. Super even wash, nice crisp glazing, no backruns, lifting in a way that makes sense, easy softening, detailed lines, good granulation, no damaging in the tape or the fluid, and just nice to work on. I was able to get really deep darks without any problem lifting. I was able to make form very easily. This was just a fun time. Okay, talking about the rough, I know I just said that the cold press was a star, but I think the rough is a star. The colors are so vibrant on this, and this is what made me start to think that I love rough watercolor paper, because it is just so much fun to move colors around on this thing, and I was able to get nice, smooth colors, even though this was a rough. Of course, you're not going to get the kind of detail that you would with a cold or a hot pressed, but this was just really fun. The granulation is really pretty, so is the mixing, and even wash. Okay, glazing was, could be crisper, but it's a rough, so how crispy do you want it to be? No background issues, normal lifting. If I were to recommend which of these Leonardo papers to get, it would be the cold and the rough, and probably the rough. I've never worked with rough press paper before, but I really like this. I think that it could be really useful for anything where you don't need to have super tiny detail, because the color just stays so bright and it moves around so nicely on the paper. And because it is so heavy, you can put a ton of water on this paper and it won't budge at all. You do not need to tape down this paper. I have a bit of a first impressions review, so you can see a bit of those opinions right after I finish testing. So let's talk about my favorites. These are definitely my favorites in the artist grade of the Hanhemuhle papers. They are all 600 GSM, which is ridiculous. They are like cards, super thick, barely bow at all, really nice. Starting with the hot press. So this was actually a disappointment. The hot press is not a paper that I recommend simply because of the backgrounds. Okay, in the background test, we have backgrounds. This is more likely to happen with hot press paper, so I was like, okay. But then in the lifting, there's also backgrounds. I wasn't aiming for backgrounds there. There's also backgrounds in the glaze. So that tells me that this paper has a very high propensity for making backgrounds, which is not good news. The lifting test performed more like I would expect it, with the phthalo green lifting some, but not entirely, and the green earth lifting entirely. Granulation was okay. Blending was also okay. You're definitely able to get thin lines on here. You can get even thinner. And smoothing could be better. I have some harsher lines, but I think you're able to get better smoothing. Very sturdy paper, fine with erasing, fine with masking tape, fine with masking fluid, very even wash, and no problem with the glazing. So that was my first impressions. I will have scans of all of these available immediately for my patrons and eventually on my blog. I hope that this was informative. Let me know, have you ever tried these? Have you tried other 600 GSM papers? What do you think? Do you like 600 GSM or 300 GSM? 300 GSM is what I normally use, but I need to start looking at some 600 GSM papers and some rough papers for sure.